Chris, and this is my second vlog. Let's see, just picking up from where I left off last time. I talked about going on the jet program, yeah, and arriving in Osaka about 9 years ago. I was placed at middle school or junior high school and an elementary school. I didn't know what to expect at first. When I first got to my placement city, my supervisor drove me around, got the paperwork done as I mentioned last time, got my phone set up, bank account set up. It was very helpful. And then a few days later, or maybe it was the day, I don't quite remember which day, but it might have been the same day, I was taken to the placement school, the school I was placed in, and it was in a car, and yeah, so students were there. I remember it was probably around after school time, and yeah, so they were at the gates and they saw a car driving in, a new face they didn't see before, so it was kind of fun, just to have students be excited to see you arrive, even if they don't know if you're the new English teacher or not. So I got out of the car, changed shoes, got into slippers. It was my first time visiting the school I'd be working at. And yeah, just got introduced to the teachers, staff that were present. I don't recall, but I think I should have been given a tour of the school. My placement school wasn't that big. There were about 4 classrooms for each year, or each grade. So, first, second, third year of middle school. And so yeah, at max, it would have been like 12 classrooms at most. And like once the dust settled and I actually started going into class and starting my job, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I had a little time to look at the school textbooks. They were quite easy. And at that time, English was taught starting at middle school, so from first year, I assumed there was a lot of basics. And for English, students spend about 4-5 classes a week, so it's not exactly 1 hour, but 40 to 50 minutes every time, so they get close to 5 hours every week, or at least 4. And yeah, I guess I had high hopes regarding English. I thought it'd be fun, if not challenging. Before I went to Japan and applied for the JET program, I did sign up for like a training course to get certified as having received training to teach English as a second or foreign language, which is a different game than just teaching English to, or like in an English class back in the States. You're teaching English as a foreign language or a second language, which means you have to be patient with your students and understand, for example, they might already have some knowledge, they're just not absolute beginners. But anyways, going back to the school and English class, yeah, I didn't quite know what to expect, but once I actually went into the classroom, it wasn't really ideal for teaching classes. When I learned Japanese back in college, the max was like 20 students in a actual discussion classroom. You could have a lecture with 30 to 40, but a small classroom size helps. There's less students for each other to be distracted by each other, and usually, it'd be nice for them to sit in a circle where the teacher can be in the center of the room, and when they actually have to do like paired or group activities, then they can change their seats. But in the traditional Japanese classroom, it's that same setup where you have rows and columns basically. So students all sit in rows and columns with their desks aligned, facing the front of the classroom with the blackboard and the teacher's, I guess, well, it wouldn't be really a desk, but it's just their temporary table. And yeah, the teacher would just lecture on while the students either took notes or just, I guess, blanked out. In terms of English, I was hoping that there were going to be more motivated students, but I think whatever motivation they have either gets killed off in their first year, or they just never had any to begin with. And one reason that might be is because basically the entire education system, I think past elementary school, it becomes just a test prep, basically. Which I mean by that is you have class, but they're teaching to the test pretty much basically all the time. Like in the first semester, or first term actually, they don't do semesters, I think it's trimesters. There's the spring, and then there's like summer, fall, winter, and then there's like the really short one, like between spring and winter. So those 3 terms, and in their first term, the first year students would, first get acquainted with the school and how middle school is different from elementary school, and just get used to having textbooks all the time and wearing their uniforms, being on time, just regular middle school stuff that every elementary school student has to go through in their transition. And I think at first most students do pretty well at their first midterm, maybe up to their first exam, if they actually follow the material and pay attention in class. Some students, I don't know, maybe it's their family situation, maybe they don't have a place where they can actually study, but in general, I think most students could easily pass and get good grades. But when it comes to English, there is a negative attitude towards students that really try hard to learn and speak as fluently as possible. There are unmotivated kids that couldn't give a damn about English at all, because it's like, it's Japan, we don't have to speak English, that kind of attitude, which then spreads out, and the kids that do well, they're like, what are you going on about? You think you're better than us? Or that's just ugh, speak Japanese or something like that, And I think a lot of students tend to be sensitive about what their peers think, even if they're not like friends or anything. So, they, as a result, kind of lose motivation to do well, or just because they don't want to get picked on or stand out too much. Even though it's not hard if you're in class like every day and just follow along and be proactive. There's not that much to be asked. So that's one reason, just some general bullying or just not wanting to stick out or stand out. The second is, after they learn their foundation in their first term, learn the alphabet, the capitalized and short lowercase, and then after that, it's just basic grammar and learning how to put together words into a sentence, which then goes to, I guess, how teachers are teaching. Because once they get the hang of like this basic sentence, like this is, or my name is, and he, she, that, those kind of easy but really critical components to language, especially for communication, it then just becomes less learning and just route repetition. Just write out the sentences and just repeat after me kind of thing going on, which can be important because you have to put in the work to learn a language. And I think for most people, at the middle school age, it's next to impossible. Well, it's not impossible, but it's very hard for students to be motivated enough to do it on their own and also know what they're doing when it comes to learning a language. And at a certain point, it just becomes repetition. The teachers, that teach English, they, in most cases, they don't know English all that well. They might have taken it and pass the exams to become an English teacher, which isn't, at least from what I can see, doesn't have that much of a actual language ability, or like demonstrated abilities with the English language. Some might study abroad experience, like even if it's like a few months, which would really help. And others can just be like terrible and just speak in broken English and teach like really bad English that just doesn't sound right and could be grammatically incorrect as well. And on that note, it becomes a lot of testing, so a lot of teachers, they're really strict about grammar and less about just being able to communicate. So it really kills students' motivation because no matter how hard they try, there's a set or like one set correct answer to it, each problem. And if it's only partially correct, then they're like, nope, no points there. You gotta try harder. Which, I mean, yeah, you need to get things right, but learning a language shouldn't be about points. It's learning a skill. And when you're learning something, you don't want to do anything that deliberately kills a student's motivation just for the sake of it being part of the process. What is the point of education? Are you just there to tell a student whether they're a good student or a bad student based on how well they did on a test, or are you just evaluating them just to tell them you're doing good or bad? What should really matter is measuring progress in the sense that you're not being not trying to be subjective because everyone's different. They have different families, backgrounds, different income, different experiences just growing up and exposure and who they're with. And it can affect a lot of learning outcomes, not just based on being in the same school at taking the same class. And there's just no time or leeway for students and teachers to, I guess, cooperate in such a way where they're learning together, not just based on the calendar clock telling them, you've got a test at this time, you have to be ready by this, and then the next test, and the next test, and then by the time you're on your third year of middle school, you gotta study up for the entrance exams to go to high school. And then once you're in high school, it's like, well, are you just gonna go get a job, or are you gonna go to college? And if so, you're gonna have to study all this, and just study and study, and it doesn't really work that well because a lot of students end up going to cram school, the juku, in Japan, which is quite different in terms of education compared to the West. Not all East Asian countries have that practice necessarily, and not every student has to go, but it's like for students that either want to go to a really good school, whether it's high school or college, and they just get that extra attention and like study time to master everything they need to know for the test they have to take, which then what's the point of education? You're just learning to master the exam. You're not necessarily learning to acquire any life skills. You could be socially awkward and not have any knowledge about how to make friends or get along with people. As long as you got the good tests, you go to a good school, they assume you're set for life, which isn't really the case. I mean, every prestigious university has students that are most likely average compared to other universities that might not be as prestigious. And just because you go to a good school doesn't mean you'll find a good job or become an entrepreneur or just end up being happy. But anyways, back to English. So, yeah, by year one, they lose their motivation for a lot of people. And my role teaching English was very limited, to say the least. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, they said that it's like everybody knows this term in the JET program. So basically, every situation is different. They have an acronym for it, like ESID, ESID. Every situation is different, which is true. Depending on where you get placed, who you're working with, the class size, there's a variety of factors, and nothing's exactly the same, even if you're in the same country. So in my case, how do I put it? I was basically shuffled around to every class, and at that time, the school I was placed at wasn't like exactly full to the max. So instead of 12 classes, I think there were only 11 classes, and I get shuffled around so that I go to each class at least once a week, but usually just once a week, which isn't really much time to actually work with any student or any class, because I'm there for each class is like 50 minutes, 45 or 40 if it's like a short day due to some other school events they have to adjust the class schedule for. And with so many faces, it's hard for me to actually get to know any students and be able to have a decent amount of exposure for us to even have like a know each other and converse like casually, just being able to talk without feeling like you're just stranger from another country, and just going once a week too. It really depends on the teacher, but a lot of times for me, there's that. I think a lot of people mentioned before when they teach English, but you might end up being used as a human CD player, which basically means the Japanese teacher for English class would just have you read out from the textbook or something they wrote or made up on the blackboard or maybe the projector, and have the students repeat after you. This could be sentences or just plain single word vocabulary, and that can be really, really tedious, really quick. Especially if you're like going to maybe 4 or 5 classes in one day and basically doing the same exact thing over and over, which is one of the things I don't like about teaching in school, since you're teaching everyone the exact same thing at the exact same rate, basically. And no matter how many years you keep doing that, you're stuck doing the same thing at the same level, basically. You could get better at teaching, but at least on my part, I didn't have any real teaching role or planning classes because I'm only there once a week, and to some extent, the teachers treated the classes I would be in as sort of a fun time where they like me to maybe have some kind of game or activity for like maybe up to 10-15 minutes, just without letting me really know at what level the students are at or what they're actually currently on. So very little coordination and very little reason for me to be motivated about doing what I'm given just on the spot randomly. So that not only kills that kind of stuff not only kills the motivation of students, but also the native speaker of English. So for my case, I was teaching even in my first year on the program. There were nights when I was thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing here? This wasn't exactly how I thought it'd be. And I did think about like quitting about sometimes even in my first year, but having been upgraded from an alternate later on in the year, I was quite driven to just push on. It's such a rare opportunity for me and privilege for me to be in Japan and like working and actually making a living income. So I kept on at it. Over time, I was able to maybe strike up conversation with students using simple English. I already knew how to speak Japanese, even though I wasn't, perfectly fluent or anything. But as a native speaker of English, I was told I should be using English with students all the time. I mean, it can be a really mixed approach depending on where you're at and what the school and board of education think. Some might encourage you to speak a little Japanese to show that you're interested in this, in the student's culture, and so they can communicate more effectively with you and get to learn about who you are, which I was focused on just trying to be a good English teacher. So yeah, I stuck to that rule or principle of just only using English when I'm interacting with students. And some students enjoy the challenge, but I think a lot more get put off because they think, no, it's impossible for me to talk with Norris because I don't understand his fluent English, or I don't know how to speak English. So some students won't even try and just give up and freeze when you try and speak to them, and there's nothing for you else to do besides move on. And yeah, going back to my own personal loss of motivation on the job, like I think for many people, just being able to live and work in Japan can be quite a rare opportunity and privilege. Especially like back, not even 10 years ago, Japan was booming as a tourist destination, and there's like cool Japan culture. People like J-pop or anime, especially. Some might be like really into Japanese martial arts, and they find a way to get to Japan and work while they pursue their interest in Japanese, like a specific part of Japanese culture. And some people just like the lifestyle here compared to where they originally came from. So yeah, to be honest, like if you go on the JET program or just any other way to get to Japan and teach English or do any other job, my advice would be to have something in mind, a goal or a mission you want to accomplish in Japan, not just your job. Because even back home, wherever you're from, I think there's a lot more to what you want to do with your life than just do your job. You have hobbies, you have friends. You want to go have fun, do stuff outside of work, enjoy life. And I think a lot of people kind of lose their way after they come to Japan. I mean, they achieved their goal of getting to Japan and having a job, but they don't know what they want to do that they can only do in Japan. I think a lot of people who like to go out, have fun, they start drinking a lot when they come to Japan, to be honest. I mean, drinking is like, I wouldn't say it's part of the culture, but most societies in general, adults are drinking alcohol at some point, usually at night. But in Japan, let's see, compared to the States, I mean, there's no law against drinking in public, so you could just open up a can of beer outside. No one's gonna stop you or arrest you. and there are a lot of bars and izakayas, which are like Japanese style restaurant bars, and they have like all you can drink uh, meal plans where you could just go out with friends and just order as many drinks as you want for like an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. But that's not something I was interested in. I never really got into drinking. So in my first year, the other JET program participants had, they have their outings, and a lot of times, they go to bars, get to grab some food and drinks, and just socialize. But it wasn't really my thing. I wasn't really quite interested in going out that time. But looking back, I think I should have maybe tried to go in and enjoy myself more. While I was on the program, and it can be valuable to network too with other people, even if they're just planning to stay in Japan temporarily or maybe in the long term. Like, you don't have to be friends with everyone, but some people might even be creeps or weirdos. But it's good to just get out there and experience things rather than just be holed up in your own room. And just especially now, like just playing on your game console or computer or just smartphone. There's so much you could do to just waste time nowadays on your own without even going outside. And yeah, just don't be afraid to go out, spend some money. I know that not everyone has the luxury of just living life without student debt or any other kind of debt. But if your income allows for it, go out. You don't have to go and drink and get drunk, puke your guts out, kind of thing. But go out and just experience something, whatever you find interesting or you haven't tried, and that would help keep you motivated to stay in Japan. Since it's such a rare opportunity for many people. Anyways, for me, eventually, I decided I wanted to go through like training myself. I wanted to better myself more. I wasn't really interested, the night thing with drinking in clubs and whatnot. So I looked around. I used to practice Aikido when I was a kid back in the States. I did it for a few years, basically from elementary school up to high school. Just partway, and then I got into sports and I kind of quit. But as a kid, I went there and practiced like an hour a week, which I mean it's not much, but it did have some, I guess, lasting impact on me. It made an impression on me. First martial art I experienced. Some people might not think of it a martial art, but anyways, I remember just thinking back. Like even in college, I practiced just a little bit because I, thought maybe it'd be good for me, but I never really stuck with it. And when I came back to Japan, it's already been a year since I came. I was on my second year. I wasn't really happy or content with just my work and going home at the end of the day and just playing on the computer or like what am I doing in Japan for, kind of feeling I had that I wanted to to deal with. So, since I'm in Japan, why not go pick up a Japanese martial art, like authentic, at where it's from. And with my past experience of Aikido and my impression at the time that it was focused on personal development more so than just fighting, I decided to just do a search for dojos in Osaka. And I just started picking places just based on whether or not they seemed convenient to get to. So at first I went to a dojo, had 2 trial lessons there, but it didn't seem like the Aikido I knew. It's very, how should I say, very forced and very muscle dependent. You had to have a lot of strength to do it their way. So I tried it out. They were like, if you want to, please go ahead and join. But I decided to take a rain check on that and then visit a second dojo, which I didn't really do any research beforehand. I was just going to places based on whether or not it was close enough to me. And it was a Saturday. One of the students, the higher ranking students, was teaching at the time, at least for the first hour. So I didn't even make a phone call to say I was going to visit the dojo or anything, which would be the best practice in terms of etiquette, but dojos are open to visitors basically all the time. So, no appointment needed. I just walked in, said I'd like to observe the class. I had a change of clothes to practice the trial class if I intended to, but the senior student at that time was just like, alright, just take a seat here and you can watch class. I observed, and it seemed a lot like the Aikido I know. I practice Aikido under the Aikikai organization. So, it seemed like the Aikido I knew, not the, I guess, other schools that might teach things and do things a little bit differently. And, I thought it looked good, and, I'd be interested maybe practicing. And then I didn't even know, at the time, he was just a senior student. So, midway through the class, the actual sensei, or Shihan, came in and invited me to just change and, get on the mat, the tatami, which I did. And I think that night was a very fateful night. Kind of changed, I wouldn't say changed my life at that point, but, put me on a path that changed my life. Set me on the right path. I think I was I think most people would think they're a decent person, at least somewhat. I wasn't really thinking about doing Aikido to be a better person in terms of good and bad, but just I wanted to train myself more and I guess seek more of a maturity, not just fool around like a lot of the other 20-some-year-olds at the time. And I don't really recall the first class, but I think I was able to receive the Shihan's technique, and I was quite impressed. I thought this was the real deal. How he was able to do everything effortlessly, even though he was 80 years old, just around 80 at the time. 80-year-old man with a kind of small stature was able to do everything against much younger, stronger, people that would grab or try and strike him. So yeah, at that point I just decided to sign on that same day, and that's the beginning of my Aikido journey in Japan, which I'll go into detail maybe in a different video. So I think I'll wrap up my second vlog right here. I taught English on the JET program for 5 years, and then had a direct contract for the 6th year. Teaching English wasn't really my thing. Aikido became my reason for staying in Japan. Just teaching English was, although it was my job and my legal, I guess, reason that I could stay in Japan, since I'm working in a job that only a foreigner can do. But work isn't life. So if you're thinking of coming to work in Japan, or if you're already in Japan and working or doing something else, take the chance to explore, do something new, and try to be sober. There's a lot of things you can appreciate, and of course there are a lot of downsides too if you know what to look, or if you just choose not to look. Depending on how you take things, so you can take things personally or not, just let it slide off you and move on. Well, I'll just stop things around here before I banter on. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again. Alright.